Welcome to this video interview with Carla Balch from Inteliquet. Thank you, Carla, for joining us today.
Thank you.
So could you briefly introduce yourself and tell us a bit about Inteliquet?
Yes, and thank you for having me. So I'm Carla Balch, and I'm the CEO of Inteliquet. Our mission is to create one source of truth for healthcare, all stakeholders in healthcare, patients, pharma, business, payers. And the way that we plan to do that is being very open and collaborative with other players in the same space. I've been in the oncology world for 20 years, so this is my 20th ASCO. And in some ways I'm excited about the things that have changed, and in some ways we haven't seen enough change. So Inteliquet is intent upon making a change in the next few ASCOs.
Fantastic. So Inteliquet aims to dramatically improve clinical trial success. Can you explain the importance of this?
Well, we are passionate about clinical trials because new drugs come to market for patients, and the only way they come to market is through clinical trials. The process right now is old school. It is still broken. A lot of it is EMR, electronic medical record based. A lot of it is scanning through charts one by one. And there's really no way that a physician or a clinical trial professional can screen every patient every night for every trial. And so that's what Inteliquet does. Let us, as a technology innovator and disruptor, let us screen every patient every night for every trial, and then let the physicians and the professionals deal with the patients that are matches for clinical trials. The faster we do that, the faster new drugs will come to market.
Okay, so what steps are Inteliquet taking to improve trial success?
You know, this is a hard one. It's a hard problem, but it all starts with data, in my opinion, and high quality, high quantity data is one thing, but it has to be very usable data. So what we do is we ingest information from all healthcare systems, electronic medical records, lab information system, very importantly, molecular diagnostic systems. And we bring that data in, we improve it, return it to the healthcare providers, but then we use that to match inclusion and exclusion criteria for trials. We put that together and we find patients for trials.
Okay, so a key issue is low patient recruitment and accrual rates. So in your opinion, how can clinical trial participation by patients and physicians be improved?
Yeah. I think it's very similar to the workflow problem. The more patients you can identify, then the more patients one can approach about educating them around what is involved in participating in a clinical trial. I personally think that clinical trial patients get excellent care. They're watched very closely. 95% of patients who have been on a trial before report that they would do it again. That's how positive the experience is. And so I think that as we fix this workflow in the clinical trial space, we'll see more patients getting involved, and that will normalize the clinical trial. Unfortunately, what we have right now is, at least in the US, there's the standard of care. Patient is diagnosed, and there's a sort of a rote pathway that that patient will go down. Research to date has been a side venture, if you will. It's a separate workflow, it's hard, and what the technology, Inteliquet, can do is sort of bring that together so that every patient has the opportunity to be on a trial as a treatment option. It's not an odd side treatment choice. So we have to change the workflow, and we're bending that workflow right now. In 2007, there was an initiative to move all providers in the US from paper medical records to electronic medical records. That was a big change for them behaviorally in the practices. What we find is that's what we're doing right now. Just like physicians went from paper to an EMR in 2007, here it is 2019, almost 2020, and we're just now transitioning to a brand new workflow that's electronic with Inteliquet. That should move us to finding more patients faster.
Okay, so how is Inteliquet helping to tackle the challenges associated with launching clinical trials?
Oh, I love this question. Pharmaceutical companies, they spend so much intellectual property and energy trying to find a cure for a specific disease. When it comes time to open the trial, unfortunately, pharma and contract or clinical research organizations will go back to the same well over and over, meaning they will choose the same sites of care to do the research in. While that's great in one respect, because we know those sites love research, the pharmaceutical company has no idea if the patients actually exist at that site. So there's so much time wasted opening a trial at the wrong site. They don't know if the patients exist. Our technology can tell pharmaceutical companies, for a proposed clinical trial, you should open that trial here, here, and here, because we already know that the patients are there. And there's two things that are really important about this. You have to know whether a patient is eligible for a trial, and that means that they meet the inclusion and exclusion criteria. A completely different issue is, are they available for the trial? We are able, with predictive analytics, to look at a patient in their diagnosis and where they are at that moment. They might be eligible with one slight change. When that change happens, which is unfortunately usually progressive disease, they now become available for the trial. This means that the providers and the clinical research staff know that patient is about to become eligible. That's a huge problem that's been solved. If you give providers the time to plan for a clinical trial, they will most likely put that patient on a trial.
So in the next 5 to 10 years, how would you like to see the field advance?
I would like to see patient voice equal to physician voice in the clinical trial space. And what I mean is, right now, most of the clinical trial activity is done between pharmaceutical company or CRO and a provider's office, meaning a community oncology practice, a hospital, or an academic medical center. So you have physicians and research coordinators speaking for or looking on behalf of the patient. We would like to take that one step further and give the patient the opportunity to know enough about their diagnosis to raise their hand, whether that's verbally or through technology or social media, to identify themselves as a potential candidate for a trial. And so what Inteliquet is able to do right now is shorten the distance between pharmaceutical sponsor with a new drug and Betty on Main Street. But the way we do that right now is through the provider that Betty sees. Our goal is to go eventually not only to the provider, but also include Betty as her own advocate to be on the trial.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any other comments you'd like to add?
You know, one of the saddest things that I always reflect on when we spend time talking about the future is how impatient I am for the future to get here. So just in the time that you and I have been talking, there have been patients sitting on exam room tables. Some of those patients were eligible for a trial, and they were not offered a trial because there's an old workflow in place. Some of those patients may have indicated an interest in a trial and may have been denied. That's not okay with me or with Inteliquet. And so we hope that next year, maybe when we talk to you again, we will have made a big change in the number of patients that were presented a trial or brought a trial up to their physician and the physician said yes.